Hermosa, South Dakota's Jess Tierney is no stranger to the big stage. The college rodeo coach at Western Oklahoma State College has qualified for the national finals steer roping an impressive 10 times, finishing top 5 in the world on 4 different occasions, including a third-place finish in 2021. This year's Badlands Circuit champion is headed back to Kansas Star Arena in third place, only $11,000 behind 4-time world champion Scott Snedeker and last year's world champion Cole Patterson. Jess, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Now, the Tierney name is rather synonymous with rodeo in the Badlands. Tell us a little bit about your childhood, some of your earliest memories of the sport, when you really decided that, hey, I want to be a professional rodeo cowboy.
Well, I wrote my first calf when I was 7 years old, and my dad had a barn out north of Rapid City. And so I got on this bulldogging horse. I roped a calf going around the arena, and that's when I really started liking it. My granddad had a ranch out by Kyle, South Dakota. So I grew up just getting to, just cowboy around the hills and learn how to swing a rope and crack a whip and all that stuff. So, just my childhood was one of them deals where it was easy to become part of what we were doing. But, as I got to rodeo and I got in college and I got to meet a lot of people from Oklahoma to New Mexico, all the way up through South Dakota, just the rodeo family that you get really got me to where I knew this is what I wanted to do. I don't know if I'd be really all that great at doing anything if it didn't have something to do with a horse, So, so that's how I got brought up into it. And for the past 20 years, I've been rodeoing. I made my first national finals in 2011. Had some good years and some bad years. I've had some great people in my life. Just like you mentioned, Scott Snedeker, he's winning the world this year. I bought my 2 horses off of him. He's really helped me out the last few years. So I'm excited to see what we're going to get won this year. This year's the first year it adds $500,000. So actually the rounds pay just over 10,000. So when you say 11, we're just one go around behind this year. So that feels good.
There you go. Now tell us about those early years. What's changed since you first got going? I know you're an all around hand. You've team rope, tie down rope. What led you down the steer roping path?
My dad took me to my first pro rodeo in Killdeer, North Dakota in 2002. And I didn't quite fill my permit. I remember I won $660. You got to win $1,000 to fill your permit. I might have been the only one I went to. So I had a little more to finish that next year. In 03 is when I bought my card. I went to school in Alva, Oklahoma, where I graduated, which really is what kind of brought me to Oklahoma. And then while I was down here, I was team roping, bulldogging, and roping calves when I went to college and when I first started pro rodeoing. And then as I was down here, I met a guy named Buster Record and another guy named C.A. Lauer in Buffalo, Oklahoma. And they just kind of took me in under their wing, and I just kind of become part of the family right there. They let me travel with them and ride their horses. And it just one of them events where, I didn't have to rodeo all the time. I could still maybe do something else with rodeo, which I like that. And you really had to know how to use your horse. I like that. You can't get much done in steer roping by yourself. If you don't use your horse, you've just minimized your opportunity of making a good run. So those 2 things really attracted me to the sport. If it wouldn't have been for those 2 guys in my early years, I can't say as I'd have made it very far.
You mentioned you've stayed in Oklahoma since you went to school in Alva. Is that correct?
I came back to South Dakota for a few years. I met my wife up there, got married. We lived around there for a couple of years. And then I got the job here in Altus, Oklahoma as the rodeo coach in 2017. Been here ever since.
From steer roping to coaching at the collegiate level, you've won the Cinch Timed Event Championship. Your career in rodeo has really covered a lot of ground. Go a little bit deeper into some of those names you've mentioned that have really helped you in your rodeo career, that you would consider a mentor or even a hero.
Well, first off, my parents had a lot to do with me even getting started. And obviously my dad helped me with the fundamentals and just the mindset of how we're going to go out here and do this in life, And so I had a good foundation built from my folks, my grandparents, and my friends around the hills. And then when I went to college, I went to school in Hobbs, New Mexico when I first started New Mexico Junior College. I lived with Jimmy Cooper down there. And Jimmy Cooper is probably the toughest individual that I've ever met. Anybody who knows him they just agree like that, with me. So that was no problem. And then, so he really taught me a lot just about being mentally tough and how to just practice hard and see what you want to get and go get it, So as I come out of high school, I met Jimmy, or I knew Jimmy, but I stayed with him for a couple of years. And then I went on to Oklahoma, met Buster CA. They really taught me how to know horses and have fun and enjoy your friends. And then actually right after that experience, I got to stay and rope with Bobby Harris from Highmore, South Dakota for a short period of time there one summer. And I'd known Bobby growing up, but that was the first, 3 or 4 months that I got to spend with him. And he's just got so much class about what he does. And so that was fun to see that side of what he does. And so between those 4 or 5 guys right there, that kind of mixed up the way that I wanted to do what I do. So I like to have fun with what I'm doing. I like to know why I'm doing it. I like to be tough about why I'm doing it and, have some finesse about it. So I guess those guys are what molded me. So
throughout your career, I know that you've won major rodeos like Dodge City, San Angelo, San Antonio, Pendleton, Prescott. Are there any wins or rodeos that are a little bit sweeter for you or that might be a little bit more near and dear to your heart?
Well, it's not really a true rodeo event, but winning the timed event was probably the most special win I've ever had, just because it's so prestigious. I mean, a lot of guys I looked up to growing up had won that, and then when I got to win it, man, it was just like, kind of one of them finally did it moments. But, also my dad won it, my brother won it, and so I got to win it, So as far as just those special wins, that's kind of stands above them all for me. San Antonio was a cool win for me. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember it was the second year they had steer roping at San Antonio, and I was in the team roping earlier that week and did terrible in the team roping, and then I won the steer roping later on, and I actually told the guy that I team roped with, I said, "Hey, I won the steer roping at San Antonio." He goes, "Really?" It's so terrible hitting. I was pretty what he was thinking. But no, that San Antonio was a cool win for me, and then obviously the time event.
Now, is there a particular rodeo that still might be on your bucket list that you haven't won yet?
I missed in the short round twice now to win Cheyenne, so that would be on my bucket list. Yeah.
You had big wins in Odessa, Kadoka, Coffeyville, Douglas, Wyoming, and Deadwood this year. I'm curious what your plans were starting out 2022 and how or if those changed as the season went on and progressed.
No, my plans this year were to just tie as many cattle down as I could fast. I've always kind of been a gunslinger when I had the chance, and even when I didn't need to, I kind of had that way. My wife, she's been kind of on me about tying them down. She knows what I'm capable of doing when I go into that mindset. So we started this year out, tying our cattle down. And I got closer. I feel like I got closer to my cattle. I kind of tried to control the situation a little bit better throughout the year. Now, there was times I just freaked out and just had to go for it all when I really didn't need to, probably. But, I can't say it really changed. There were some times when I didn't stick with it. But that was my goal coming in, and it's still my goal now.
Now, the 2022 National Final Steer Roping is set for November 4th and 5th at Kansas Star Arena in Mulvane, Kansas. With this being your 10th qualification, how are you preparing and how has that preparation changed from the first couple years that you qualified? Have you learned or had to adjust how you've gotten ready for this event over the years?
I've spent a lot of years doing a lot of gym work and, bicycle and running and this and that. And I can't say that I did as much of that this year. I probably spent more time just tying and roping, actually tripping steers. I usually do a lot of breakaway roping and this and that, but I've kind of just made some live action runs here at the house, which I usually don't do, on some young horses and my good horses, and just making a lot more runs here. The kids have kept me pretty busy. And plus I got a 4-year-old and a 3-year-old now. So every year things change because of that, but yeah, this year we've just been trying to make some more live runs, just kind of get ready for it. I really feel like just staying sharp on what you're doing is the most important thing for a time event guy. Rough stock guys maybe would look at it differently. Maybe being in the gym would be more of something they want to be doing because, you wouldn't want to be riding broncs. I wouldn't figure 10 or 12 a day like we would run 10 or 12 or 15 steers, So for me, making that repetition on my horses and having that timing, just because there's a lot of timing in steer roping. Your shot comes, you got to learn how to stay there, get your trip down. And things happen so fast. And if you miss one step, it's hard to go back to the next one. So timing is so important. Well, in any rodeo sport, actually. But I mean, I know it, especially in this one.
The National Final Steer Roping purse has more than doubled since 2014 with $500,000 up for grabs this year. In your eyes, how else has steer roping changed or progressed over the span of your career?
When I first started going, steers were probably a little bit bigger and we didn't have as many rodeos to go to. And now we have, I want to say, over 60. There's a lot of them adding at least $5,000-$10,000. I would say the prize money has definitely went up, and just the size of cattle we rope, so the fastness of the sport, the speed has picked up. But that's happening every time event. Every time event's gotten faster over the years. So there's no reason the tripping wouldn't do the same. I don't know. There's still some places we rope that I was roping in when I first started, like Pecos, Texas, and Odessa, Texas, and Cheyenne and Guyman, Oklahoma, where
Mhm.
you got to go tie everything down. Of course, that pays to do that anywhere you're going. Um, but there's a lot of places where it's fast. 19 on two wins a two header, or
Mhm.
30 on three wins a three header somewhere. So was it that fast when I first started? Maybe not all the time. Sometimes it was, but I just think it's really sped up. Horsepower's gotten, from what I've seen, there's just a lot of guys with good horses. Horses have gotten better, and the prize money's gotten better. It's just really exciting time to be coming into rodeo. I think, if I was 18, 20 years old, I'd be thinking, man, which way do I want to go? And a lot of guys picking it up as a second event, like a calf roper that's making the finals, or a Coleman Proctor, picking it up for his second event. He went Cheyenne all around this year. And we started the college steer roping this year. So hopefully it'll bring some young blood into what we're doing.
You mentioned earlier that you're more of a gunslinger of sorts. Going into this year's final, are you going for the go rounds or an average roper in these setups? What's your game plan as far as how you're going to attack this?
I feel like I've hopefully matured enough to just stand there open. That's been my game all year. It's been my game for a couple of years. And I got a horse. I got a couple of horses now that allow me to do that. So, I mean, I'm gonna stay in the game as long as I can. There's nothing wrong with lots and lots of fourths and fifths up there at the finals. They pay off pretty good at the end of the week. So
Absolutely. Now tell us a little bit more about the horses that you'll have with you in Mulvane and how you've been getting them ready.
well, I wormed them. No, we've just been the same old stuff. Long trotting, pulling logs around, make a couple runs now and then. A lot of breakaway and scoring. Just keeping them in our hand, keeping them thinking about what we're doing. Keep them not where they're not sore. And man, all my geldings get turned out in the same pasture, so we kind of keep it as ranchy as possible. But if I'm not at a college rodeo, we're going to be here roping on them. So that's what we do to keep them in shape.
What message or advice would you give to someone that looks up to you or is trying to make their name as professional rodeo cowboy or cowgirl getting started, whether they just bought their card or their permit, they're trying to get up the gumption to go ahead and buy that? Just anybody that's really wanting to make a name for themselves.
Well, the first advice, and I think maybe the most important advice, is to find somebody that you're comfortable with, that knows what they're doing, that is going where you're wanting to go, and start asking questions. It might be me, it might be somebody else down the road, but if they know where you want to go, and they know, then start asking questions, and then start really asking yourself, what can I do to become a better horseman? What can I do to handle my rope better? And just start going through those kind of questions and that kind of process, because the more answers you get to those questions, the quicker you're going to get where you want to go. I think maybe some of the things that held me back in my career is I was maybe more worried about how fast my feet were moving instead of what my left hand was doing, or stuff like that. So find somebody who knows where you're trying to get, and then start breaking down the fundamentals of what it's going to take to get there. And then don't give up in that process. Know where you're at. It's going to be hard, but it'll be worth it at the end. So stick with it. As far as what we do, we just try to enjoy what we're doing. You never know when it's over. You never know what day that God's going to say, it's just done. So we just enjoy what's put in front of us every day, and that's what we do.